All right. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
We are started here. We are continuing on with triennial Torah portion. We now are in Leviticus. We'll look at Leviticus 12 through. Do you want to? Yeah, you don't got that muted. Leviticus chapter 12, verse 1 through 13:28. Where's his key at? We also have a few verses in Matthew. Look at. Check out. We want to start off by looking at Leviticus 12. Like a short chapter here. Chapter 12. I'm just going to go ahead and read that. Chapter 12 of Leviticus, Vayikra. 8 verses. Tazria. Can read it. Oh, can you read that?
Okay, Leviticus 12:1. And Yahweh spoke unto Moses, saying, speaking to the children of Israel, saying, if a woman have conceived seed and born a man child, then she shall be unclean 7 days, according to the days of the separation. For her infirmity shall she be unclean. And in the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised, and she shall then continue in the blood of her purifying 30 days. She shall touch no hollow thing, nor come into the sanctuary until the days of her purifying be fulfilled. But if she bear a maid child, then she shall be unclean 2 weeks, as in her separation, and she shall continue in the blood of her purifying 66 days. And when the days of her purifying are fulfilled, for a son or for a daughter, she shall bring a lamb of the first year for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, unto the priest, who shall offer it before Yahweh, and make an atonement for her, and she shall be unclean from the issue of her blood. This is the law for her that have borne a male or a female. And if she be not able to bring a lamb, then she shall bring 2 turtles or 2 young pigeons, the one for the burnt offering, and the other for a sin offering. And the priest shall make an atonement for her, and she shall be clean.
Okay.
And do I continue?
No, that's good for now. Okay, so we see here the Torah commands for the birth of a child. When a child is conceived, that word to conceive, we'll be looking at that, I guess, in different ways throughout the day. Thank you very much. That word, Tazria, which looks like this in the Hebrew, Tazria. The root is Zara, which means to sow, to plant, to disseminate, to cast away from a distance. Casting away from a distance, when you think about sowing, it's kind of like, tossing, like throwing casting away from a distance, right? Spreading seed. We look at this Zara, which is the root of Tazria, which is this Tazria is giving you the actual dealing with conceiving the child. So the root is dealing with, the planting of it, the planting of the seed, the sowing of the seed going into the earth. But now we have this version here, Tazria, which is actually the kind of the result of it, right?
So
where it says
Zara, the root is to throw the seed out,
the sowing,
and then Tazria is the result of it.
Right. It's translated probably in your book where it says when a woman gives birth and bears.
Yeah,
bears.
And bears.
Right. And King James says conceives. The baby's coming out. Right. When the baby is coming forth. Right. Because this is what it's dealing with after the baby comes forth. Obviously, the seed was already planted and grow to its what they call that, gestation.
Fetus. It became gestational age.
Yeah. Hold on, is that when the baby comes out?
No,
I don't know those terms. I don't.
It just means full term, I guess.
Whatever.
Gestational age is just how far along the baby is.
I tried to use the word. Whatever. Okay, so again, this word Tazria is dealing with the bringing forth of the child. So then it says there about the uncleanness that comes along with the bearing of the child. Now, being that I've witnessed many children being born and the after effects thereof,
Just when it's gonna be born another day.
I can definitely.
You said the other day.
Yeah, it was.
It was recently.
It was recent.
I can definitely bear witness to the uncleanness that's involved. I tell new parents all the time, it's the most beautiful and disgusting thing simultaneously, right? It's both beautiful and disgusting all at the same time. Before, during, and after. So the time period, it seems, is understandable in terms of these weeks of uncleanness. But then it seems that to me, even for the male, the 40 days. I guess 40 days is that's understandable. 40 days is definitely understandable. I see the 40 days. 80 days, it just is a long time.
I mean, because really,
to me,
after the 6 weeks, you're pretty much done with all.
I'm saying in my carnal mind,
you're done. Pretty much, most people are.
Yeah. You don't have any.
Or have any of
the effects left. And
it's about 6 weeks.
40 days.
Mm-hmm. It's about 6 weeks. I mean, 2 days less than 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But I know people who, we talk about how to keep this Torah commandment. Ebony says she can't see the top of the board.
No, she can't.
Looks like it's cut off.
By the greenness.
So I know people who they consider themselves to be unclean, and that means they have to abstain from having relations and everything like that for 2 weeks for the boy and 4 weeks for the girl. Oh, sorry. Yeah, 7 days for the boy and then 2 weeks for the girl, as in her menstruation. So I know people who say,
Your book say menstruation?
Mine says menstruation.
Where it says infirmity? Separation for
in
her.
The days of her
verse
menstruation,
2?
Verse 2.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they kind of say, I mean, this is something, I think this might be what the Jewish people do.
Yeah.
They say that the woman is nidah for 2 weeks for a girl, and then for 1 week for a boy, and nidah. And then after that, she's like she's just ceremonially unclean. So she won't be able to go to the temple, but she's not like in nidah. So that meant that like she could actually, the husband and wife or whatever could,
Uh-huh. Okay, so that's interesting. So verse 4. Verse 4 says, and she shall then continue in the blood of her purifying. Continue. Yashab. Sit down. Yashab. To sit down. Continue in the blood of her purifying 3 and 30 days. She shall touch no hallowed thing, nor come unto the sanctuary unto the days of her. So to me, I don't know how that could be if you're continuing in something, right? If you start off in something, then you continue in it. It's a continuation of what already was. It seems to me.
Can you say that? Where is that at?
Verse 4. Verse 4.
It says, then she shall remain in the blood of her purification for 33 days.
So your book says remain. King James says continue. And the Hebrew is yashab, which is giving you that concept. So I'm just saying that. I don't know what that means if it don't mean that you're continuing on with something that already has begun. You know what I mean?
Well, is it that she's in nidah at this time, or is she just?
Well, what's continuing? Separation. Separation is the nidah. The infirmity is to be sick as if in menstruation.
As if
Her uncleanness. But the nidah, the separation, the nidah is dealing with the I don't know why that word's used if it's something new. You know what I mean? That's just my thoughts on the matter.
So you think then, and this is what I think too.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody to think that I don't think. I'm saying that
and it didn't
I literally had this conversation with some people recently who said to me that as far as what they do in their marriage, they just look at it like it's 2 weeks for a girl.
2 weeks.
Well, they wait till she stops. She stops. I'm just saying, it's 2 weeks. Oh, maybe it's 2 weeks for a girl and it's 1 week for a boy. Because when they look at these scriptures here, they see that it's nidah for 2 weeks for a girl, and it's nidah for 1 week with a boy.
I don't think I knew about that before. People doing that. Yeah, again, to me, I would say that verse 4 to me lets me know that that's a continuation of what was. So, hold on, she needs help with that. I mean, but people, people do whatever they, whatever they. But if somebody was going to ask me about it, I would say that you're dealing with this whole time period. Now, if they was going to ask me why is it double the amount for the woman, for the girl child, I don't really know that I don't really got a good answer for that. Just honestly, I just can't. I couldn't even tell you that. The scripture is silent on that issue. It don't give you a reason. And anything I could come up with would just be speculation. This would be my speculation. I can come up with theories. To me, I don't really know.
I mean, because it's almost like a punishment for having a girl.
Well, I guess you could say that. Like you go over there and you think about this
girl that you just gave birth to for double the time.
Mm-hmm. And next time, don't you come around here
and have another girl. I mean, it does seem like that to a certain extent.
When you think about it, not this. Your lineage really is continued by the male child. Your lineage, when the female child, she's going to be a continuation of somebody else's lineage.
Because she could go to another tribe, become part of another tribe.
Right. Yeah. So,
I said, but the man determines the sex of the child, right?
Yeah, because you got your you guys got like double X chromosomes, right?
Yes.
So we add the Y. Right, so we add the Y to this.
Well, you add the Y or the X. We have an X, and then you add an X or a Y.
Wow.
That's how it works.
I'm saying. But we do add the Y. I guess we could give y'all some extra X's that we got laying around. I'm just playing. But I'm just saying that I think that not to think about it as like some type of punishment or whatever, but I think that in terms of a family situation and generations, you can't, generations kind of don't go on without the seed. So
there's a reason for that for some reason. There's gotta be something besides punishment. Maybe the age.
Well, I said punishment.
Yeah, I don't see it.
I don't think it's punishment.
I don't see it as a punishment.
I think that. I think the time is actually a blessing to the lady, probably more so than to her husband, because it's just it's more time for you to be able to rest from having. You just had a child.
Yeah, maybe a better chances for another.
It's a curse to the man. It's a curse. 80 days. I'm just saying.
But just the whole, I don't know. Like whenever I talk to people, there's so many, there's just so many different ways, I guess, of how people
count the days,
of how people count the days, and how they apply the days to themselves, and even if they apply the full days or not to themselves.
Yeah.
I don't actually know why the the people that I spoke to, this was this past week actually, don't do the full. I'm pretty sure that she does the full time for the boy only because 6 weeks is a normal amount of time to get all that out of you. Yeah, but as far as the girl, the 80 days, I'm not really sure why. They're just convicted. They're just convicted that they do the 1 week.
They don't need it
for the 1 week for the boy and the 2 week for the girl, and that nobody's going up to the temple anyway. Like nobody's going to the temple. So there's no real need to follow through because it's not like she's nida for the rest of the time.
But well,
so if she's not nida for the rest of the time, then why do we need to put ourselves through this if we're not going to the temple anyway?
Well, I think to me, again, I think that the temple, it says also she shall, same verse 4, she shall touch no hallowed thing, nor come into the sanctuary until the days of her purification be fulfilled. So, of course, we have to remember and think about the fact that, we don't have these, we don't have a temple, right? There's not a place as this sanctified place that can be defiled because there is no place. But to me, I think that again, when you're thinking about the idea of continuing this thing, the nidah really is what's being continued. I would say.
So you would say that the continuing is of the nidah.
Right, because I don't know how to separate I don't know how it's separated. Based on what it's telling you in verse 2, the days of the separation of her infirmity, it just seems as if that this, you started off with this infirmity in the first place, this nidah, this separation thing, and then now something has to continue, right? So to me, that's what I see that as. Now then the other question is so there ain't no temple. I think that just adds a second layer, but we still got the first layer in terms of this whole idea of if you say that uncleanness is null and void now because there's no temple, then I guess that's one way to get around it. You know what I mean?
I mean, because what we normally do and say is that, because there isn't a temple, the law is really a family law. It's between a husband and his wife. Because in reality, no matter what you do, you're in exile right now. You never got washed by the ashes of the red heifer to make you ceremonially clean. And therefore, you can't even, and the present state you are in right now, if there was a temple, you wouldn't be able to go to the temple anyway. Because you never got sprinkled with the water, with the ashes of the red heifer in it. So he says you've never been ceremonially cleansed to begin with. And we live in this unclean land. You don't know what you're touching. You don't know who's in what state or whatnot. We're all unclean in exile. We're all unclean, ceremonially unclean. So, Tame. We're all Tame. So if you have a Tame, a woman who's in a state of Tame, she's no more unclean than anybody else. Except in regards to marriage relationships.
Yeah. I mean, to me, when I look at this, I don't know how to take it beyond the marriage relationship aspect of it. because as you said, we're really in a perpetual state of Tame. It's perpetual. If you go outside of your home and deal with other people
to any extent,
right, to any degree, you're gonna touch somebody who's Tame. Just period. That's just what it's gonna be. You ride the bus, you know what I mean? You go to some kind. You guys go to the library all the time. You know what I mean? It's uncleanness, Tameness all over the place. Right. So to me, when I look at this in terms of application of this, I don't know how else to look at it other than the marriage relationship, and to me, I just take it for what it says. You know what I mean? As far as the days go, as far as that.
Well, Angela said read commentary from Sages who said it's because the girl has the ability to bring forth life, and therefore the sanctity of her birth is treated as a more set apart experience.
Oh, it's more set apart.
A more set apart experience.
because she gives life.
Because the girl is able to give life.
You guys hear me?
That's interesting.
Can you guys hear me?
You saying something?
Turn it up.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Hold on. Wait a second. Let me make sure this sound is on. Oh.
We're on mute. Go ahead, Angela.
Okay. Guys now. When I forget and hear you. Okay. Yeah, I was reading a commentary by the sage. I have to go back and get which sage it was. I'll look for that in just a moment. But they were saying that it's treated, there's a longer period of time because the girl has the ability or the potential to bring life, and her ability to be, you know, like that portal or that matrix for life is so her birth is treated as with more sanctity, is what they were saying, because it's, you know, she being the matrix, although it does take the man's seed to procreate, she is the matrix by which the nation continues. So her birth is treated with more sanctity, is what the sage was saying. So I'll find out which sage it was. I'd be
interested to know what sage that.
I'll go look.
Yeah, I'd be interested to find out what sage that is.
Okay, hold on. I'll get it back to you in a minute.
Okay, good. Because that just, I think it might be the man in me that just causing me to think that this just sounds real like.
It's probably Rash.
You think Rashi would say something like that? All right, let's keep going. We could come back if you find out who that is.
So, but the whole thing is about the, you know, we do know people who, you know, they don't go anywhere. If if you go somewhere and you had a daughter, they'll be like, oh wait, hold on, how many days ago was that? And they'll be looking at their calendar and judging you basically for leaving your house. If you had a girl and you leave your house after 6 weeks time, you know, to go to the doctor or something, they'll be looking at you like, why did you leave your house? And you know, it's just a matter of fact. I don't know if I've heard people say that even, you know, to Denise, but it's kind of like, it's, you know, it's like you're unclean, but you're not, you're just ceremonially unclean. You're not like defiling. You're not like if somebody came to our house, hey, or somebody came to our house and, you know, they just had a baby, they're not like defiling. You know, they're not like defiling our house or anything.
Well, yeah. I mean, we we talked about this whole idea before in terms of the, Tameh is not sin. It's not sin. It's uncleanness. And we spoke about this before, and the fact that it's not as if you're bringing some sin. Yeah, see if you can see it. You're not bringing sin into. You're not going around touching sin or whatever. Like, it's not like that concept is really like it. It doesn't really make sense, really. But uncleanness, and we can see with we'll look at this a little bit later with Yeshua, bringing the point back in terms of uncleanness. I don't like to really say ceremonially unclean, but I guess at the end of the day, really, that's kind of basically what it is. Not to kind of diminish the, diminish it, but just to give some kind of context to it. When we think about the idea of the temple times, the tabernacle times, they tell you right there in that verse, right? It's a hallowed place, so they wanted to keep certain things away from that place, which is causing me to really think about the idea that that Angela had brought up, is that I don't understand that conceptually, because if you're talking about the temple and the tabernacle being the set apart place, now I got to be separated from the holy place for a longer time. Doesn't seem like it's a I don't know what the positive of it is, the plus of that might be. From a
holiness perspective. From being able, because you figure it's a privilege to be able to go into the to the tabernacle.
So now your privilege has been removed, but under the explanation, it seems as if it's like almost like a blessing because of the
only blessing through that I can see is that extra time you get to heal and I mean? That's the only in the physical.
Yeah.
But this on a spiritual level, as far as being able to enter into the tabernacle, that's because then I look at it like I've known people who have missed whole feasts. You know what I mean? Because they had a child close to Passover, because they had a child close to tabernacles, and they didn't come to the feast. And you say, well, why aren't you at Passover? Well, because I just had a baby, a month ago. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, well, spiritually, you're kind of missing out on the blessing that would be at that time. And all I'm saying is that if you're not going to the physical temple, and if you're in exile, you know what I mean? Like, you should participate in the Sabbath and
right, because as far as Tameh is concerned,
we're all Tameh.
Yeah. And when you think
we
about
all need to be cleansed again, with that red heifer ashes,
all of that. So when you think about the new covenant, looking at it from a new covenant perspective, again, we have to look back, and there's a distinction that has to be made between old covenant and new covenant. Under the new covenant, right? So this, if we look at under the new covenant, there was an offering that needed to be brought. You don't bring your offering, then you're guilty, right? You're guilty by not bringing the offering, right? So that's, you know, you broke a Torah command, that's sin, right? There's no way around it. So from a new covenant perspective, you know, we got to figure out how we fit that in, right? There has to be a distinction that was made. And again, we have to be able to look at the spirit of the law, this included, when we look at these things, and not sit up here and figure out how, you know, because this is something that the majority of this commandment that's being given here really is a temple command. It's a temple command. So
if we was in the land,
right, if we was in the land, not only in the land, but with the priesthood and with the tabernacle set up, which, you know, we don't have.
Because you would have to be very careful if you have the presence of Yahweh in your midst, that Shekinah, you know what I mean, that cloud and that fire, you know, you literally have the implements that he set into place. You have to take the utmost care to, you know what I mean, to respect him, because Yahweh is a consuming fire. And just like Nadab and Abihu got consumed because they came before him haughtily and arrogantly and didn't follow the prescribed protocol. You know what I mean?
Now, the other thing is that even though we see, now this is my thoughts on the matter, other people may have other thoughts. Yeah. When we look and we see offerings and things being put forth in these future prophetic verses, in other words, when Yeshua comes and rules and reigns, and there's people coming up bringing their offerings to the temple, that's not to say that we're reverting back to the old covenant. That's just to say that.
Oh, you mean like when we get to the point where the Levites are working again, we didn't go back.
No, right. It's not as if we're in some, like the new covenant is like some some parenthetical kind of replacement until we could get back to the old covenant, right? Just because we can find these end time scriptures that show us that there will be sacrifices brought to the temple, we can't say that we're going back to the old covenant, because the old covenant, like this is when we look at this is a clear example of something that just the way it was set up, not as if there's something wrong with the covenant, but as human beings, we're not able to follow it out perfectly. Under this kind of process, there now is a separation between the person and the creator.
Based off of something that she did not control. She didn't control well, I mean, she didn't control she was having a boy or a girl, but you know, she did kind of.
Well, either way, that you just talking about boy and girl, just about the length.
Yeah.
But be that as it may, there's still a separation, right? So
that's what it's called. It's that time of separation.
Right. But so when we think about what happens with us with the new covenant, with the spirit of Yahweh actually dwelling inside of us, you know, we can't, the thought that there's a time period once a month where the spirit ain't there. Or if you're you know having children, we talking about 40 days, 80 days when the spirit of the Most High is not there. Like this is like kind of the thought process if we want to sit up here, you know, looking back at this, right? That's what it was in that situation. But now in the new covenant, it's kind of like the old covenant, but it's not exactly like it, because we can't say that this whole idea of the, you know, being in the presence of Yahweh with like the purpose of the spirit is to cleanse you, right? It can't, hold on, don't do that, stop. The purpose of the Spirit is for it to cleanse you. Like the Spirit cleanses you. It cleanses you from the inside out. So it's dealing with something that's dirty in the first place. Right? As to where, when we look at this, it's depending on you to do the things that makes you clean. Right? And then if you don't do it, then you're unclean, and then you gotta get clean. But under the new covenant, the Spirit, the presence of Yahweh is the thing that is actually cleansing you. Right? So there's differences when we look at the two. And I can't see how we could ever kind of go backwards to this being part of how we kind of the means by which we have our relationship with the Father.
It can't be based off.
It can't be. No, it can't be. It just can't be that. But again, we saw. I don't know if there was a miss. I was thinking about when I was up at the penitentiary where I had a mystery that I didn't have an answer to up there as well. So this is another one for the list in terms of these mysteries of why, and explanations that I don't really have an answer for.
Is it that you don't have an answer, or is that you just don't want to say what you think?
And
it's not actually like scripturally. It's just
I don't know why you guys bring that up, but I guess
because you've talked about this before.
I guess it could be that. I guess it could be that.
You said different reasons that it could possibly be.
I guess. I mean, it could be that. Be that as it may, it's still kind of mysterious. Okay, so let's go on to 13. 13 all the way up to 28.
And Yahweh spoke unto Moses and Aaron, saying, when the man shall have in the skin of his flesh a rising, a scab, or bright spot, and it be in the skin of his flesh, like the plague of leprosy, then he shall be brought unto Aaron the priest, or unto one of his sons the priest. And the priest shall look on the plague in the skin of the flesh, and when the hair in the plague is turned white, and the plague is sight be deeper than the skin of his flesh, it is a plague of leprosy. And the priest shall look on him and pronounce him unclean. If the bright spot be white in the skin of his flesh, and inside be not deeper than the skin, and the hair thereof be not turned white, then the priest shall shut up him that have the plague 7 days. And the priest shall look on him the 7th day, and behold, if the plague in his sight be at a stay, and the plague spread not in the skin, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days more. And the priest shall look on him the 7th day, and behold, if the plague be somewhat dark, and the plague spread not in the skin, the priest shall pronounce him clean. It is but a scab, that he shall wash his clothes and be clean. But if the scab spread much abroad in the skin, after that he hath been seen of the priest for his cleansing, he shall be seen of the priest again. And if the priest see that, behold, the scab spreadeth in the skin, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprosy. When the plague of leprosy is in a man, then he shall be brought unto the priest, and the priest shall see him, and behold, if the rising be white in the skin, and it hath turned the hair white, and there be quick raw flesh in the rising, it is an old leprosy in the skin of his flesh. And the priest shall pronounce him unclean, and shall not shut him up, for he is unclean. And if a leprosy break out abroad in the skin, and the leprosy cover all the skin of him that have the plague, for his head even to his toe, even to his foot, wheresoever the priest looketh. Then the priest shall consider, and behold, if the leprosy have covered all his flesh, he shall pronounce him clean that hath the plague. It is all turned white, he is clean. But when raw flesh appeareth in him, he shall be unclean. And the priest shall see the raw flesh and pronounce him to be unclean. For the raw flesh is unclean, it is a leprosy. Or if the raw flesh turn again and be changed into white, he shall come into the priest. And the priest shall see him, and behold, if the plague be turned into white, the priest shall pronounce him clean that have the plague, he is clean. The flesh also, in which even in the skin thereof was a boil, and is healed. And in the place of the boil, there be a white rising, or a bright spot, white and somewhat reddish, and it be showed to the priest. And if, when the priest see it, behold, it be in the sight lower than the skin, and the hair thereof be turned white, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a plague of leprosy broken out of the border. But if the priest look on it, and behold, there be no white hairs therein, and if it be not lower than the skin, but be somewhat dark, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days. And if it spread much abroad in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a plague. But if the bright spot stay in his place and spread not, it is a burning boil, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. Or if there be any flesh in the skin whereof there is a hot burning, and the quick flesh that burneth hath a white bright spot, somewhat reddish or white, then the priest shall look upon it, and behold, if the hair in the bright spot be turned white, and it be in sight deeper than the skin, it is a leprosy broken out of the burning. Wherefore the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the plague of leprosy. But if the priest look on it, and behold, there be no white hair in the bright spot, and it be no lower than the other skin, but be somewhat dark, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days. And the priest shall look upon him the 7 days. And if it be spread much abroad in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the plague of leprosy. And if the bright spot stay in his place and spread not in the skin, but if it be somewhat dark, it is a rising of the burning, and the priest shall pronounce him clean, for it is an inflammation of the burning.
Okay, so now it goes into speaking about leprosy. Right? It went from this thing, Zara, to Tizraat, or Sra'ah.
What's that word on top?
So this would be Tazriat. So it kind of, you would say, size, Sara'at. Sara'at. I don't know how to say it. Sara'at.
So that's the whole word.
Sara'at, which was translated as leprosy in the King James. So this would be leprosy. And then the root is Sra'ah, like the Zadi has that TZ kind of sound together. Now, what's interesting, again, we look at these words. This kind of like is a word that kind of sounds like this word. Right? When we just look at this gives you that kind of Z sound. Zara. And then this kind of gives you that TZ sound. That's sa, tra. So you got tra, and then you got zara, where, you know, they're different words. They have, you know, similarities in, you know, the resh and the ayin, but also the sound really of the sadi and the zayin. But then also even dealing with what it is, like this is an eruption,
Like an outbreak.
like an outbreak, or an eruption, or something that's cast out. Think about vomiting. You think about vomiting is something that's, you have that heave from inside that comes out, right? Where when you think about this over here is this thing that's cast out, that you're tossing and throwing this thing out far. So there's similarities in terms of how they sound, but also similarities in terms of what's going on. Right? There's a casting involved over here. And there's also this casting that's involved over here that comes from internal and goes outward. So again, we think about leprosy. We look at leprosy. Refers to this skin dis-ease, this thing that appears on the skin. We see various places in the scripture where it happens to different people. Leviticus here gives you a description of it, of how to the priest is to recognize it, and you know what's he supposed to do whenever he sees it. But when we look at different cases of, you know, people having leprosy, there's something that is connected with people's actions, I would say, that is associated with leprosy, the plague of leprosy. Right? Does it call it plague of leprosy in chapter 13? Yes, verse 2. It's something that, oh, that's nice. It's something that is most times when you see the word leprosy in the Bible, it's associated with a plague, the plague of leprosy. In other words, this is something that is, when you think about plagues typically are judgment actually from Yahweh.
Something that comes from him.
Something that he actually did to you. Not exclusively, but the most times you see plague in the Bible, the word plague is coming from Yahweh. Yahweh is the one that's causing this thing to happen. And so now here we see it's talking about this leprosy, and the first time it describes it is referring to it as the plague of leprosy. So I thought that was interesting.
It's kind of interesting to me, like, why is this disease something that the scripture specifically talks about? You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure that in the wilderness they had a lot of diseases, a lot of things, a lot of sicknesses, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why is leprosy one of the ones that he's talking about? And it's a long.
I might have an answer. I wonder if anybody else does.
I mean, he there's a lot of scriptures devoted to it. Like,
yeah, there's like
we read
2
like
chapters.
half right now, and it was long. I was able to go and make some coffee and come back.
Half of the 1 chapter. more of this one chapter, but then there's a whole other chapter that deals with it. So why though? Why? That's a good question. Why?
What's the question?
Why, out of all the diseases that Israel had in the wilderness, is this one talked about in depth like this?
I believe because it's a very horrific sight, you know, and it's like compared to how Yahweh looks at sin.
Like how
it's like gross, very graphic. It changes the appearance, discoloration, inhumane, and you can move limbs. It's like a
spreads.
It spreads. I think it describes sin. I think better.
Like sin is like the plague of leprosy.
Yeah.
Well, that's how Yahweh, when he sees sin, it has that same effect. Like, we might just be like, oh, that's a little sin. But when he sees it, it can spread. It can become.
Well, when you talk about body parts falling off, is that what this is talking about? Did it describe anything like that in here?
Well, it just said about a white mark.
No, this was talking about your skin. That's swelling more.
Yeah, I think that's why in the scriptures version,
it can move around.
The scriptures version don't translate that word. It says it says the infection of Sara'at.
Oh, it doesn't translate.
It don't translate the word into leprosy, because when we think about leprosy, we think about the leprosy that we know of. I think it's like Danson's disease or something that we call leprosy, which is when people's body parts be falling off. Like when we think about all that stuff. But so when we think about leprosy, we associate it with what we know of as leprosy, which is not necessarily the same thing that they're describing here in the scripture.
So what is leprosy described in the Bible?
Right. So it's just what we was looking at. It's like a skin disorder where you have these different kind of discolorations, whiteness of hair or skin, bright spots. Right, but it's not talking about body parts falling off. In fact, the interesting that nobody did never. When we get all the way down to verse 28, where it says, "But if the bright spot remains in its place and has not spread in the skin, but is dim, it is a swelling for the burn, and the priest shall pronounce him clean, for it is only the scar of the burn." So when we look at this, it's really talking about somebody who, like, if you got this thing all over, like, how is a person clean if he has this thing that's leprosy all over him?
So once it covers you totally, then you're clean again. What? It's just because he says when you're clean and when you're unclean.
Well, okay, so we could talk about. So that's 28.
28
was the last one we looked at. So if you got these little spots on you, new spots, really, then you're unclean.
So basically,
but if you got some old scars on you but they cover they're all over you, but they're old, right? Then you could be clean. But here it says, "For it is only the scar of the burn." So like it's like the residue of it. So in other words, if the person got all the way overtaken with this thing, but he don't have like the eruptions or whatever, but all of that stuff is gone, but the scars of it, then he's clean. But I'm saying that would be like the full extent of having it, right? With these leftover scars that's still there. But again, the way we thinking about leprosy, if it's something that's overtaking you, it's not just the end of it is not scars. The end of it is like your body parts shriveling up and falling off, which is not really what this is dealing with.
But it's something that you can look at somebody and see.
Yeah, well,
it's not something that's hidden.
Yeah, right. And it's not something that would be, I mean, it's probably wouldn't be something that would be like a desirable thing to look at.
But the thing about leprosy is that it's not something that just affects people. It can affect clothes.
Right.
Houses.
We didn't talk about that, did it?
No, not yet.
It talks about those in the other chapters,
Later on.
But there is kind of a, you can kind of look at it in terms of how you can get the idea of it being something that's kind of contagious or something that could spread by the fact that when you look at verse 4, where it says, but if the bright spot is white on the skin of his body, and it does not appear to be deeper than the skin, and the hair on it has not turned white, then the priest shall isolate him who has the infection for 7 days. Then the priest shall look at him, this is verse 5, then the priest shall look at him on the 7th day, and if in his eyes the infection has not changed and the infection has not spread on the skin, then the priest shall isolate him for 7 more days. So there's an isolation that's involved with the person who has this leprosy, as if to say, if he was with other people, maybe he could make them have it too.
But still, when you look at it too, I mean, it's showing the after effects of all of it, like something still devastating, but they're clean. You know, like the hair or the eyelashes falling out, but it's still clean. But when you look at this person, although they're clean, you know they have been affected.
Yeah.
You know,
they were affected.
Like the scars are still there.
Right.
But they don't. But the ability to infect others
It's gone.
is gone.
So the punishment
It's like having chicken pox and all the spots.
you see all the spots.
But
You might be contagious
People
for the
like,
first couple days.
They get scared, but I'm not contagious. And you still be like, I don't know. I'm not trying to get that close to you right now. But I guess where I'm at with this is that, you know, when you have this infection, and you know, but it's not just something that can affect a person, but a place. So is that a judgment if it's infecting a place?
I don't know why you gotta keep talking about the place.
Because I mean, like, no, okay. I guess we'll wait till next week. I mean, I'm just saying, is it a judgment if it affects your skin and your?
I think that the simple fact that it's called the plague of leprosy, that in of itself
makes it
a judgment. That makes it a judgment. Just the simple fact that when it's described to, you know, as this plague of leprosy, this plague, this disease that's been placed on you
to show your sin.
Yeah.
But the sin isn't the leprosy.
The sin isn't the leprosy.
The sin is what you done.
You did something that caused this thing to get up on you.
That he kept warning you about, and then he finally gave you this curse.
To get your and what do you got to do? You got to go to the priest.
You got to go to the priest. You got to go to the priest, and the priest is going to look at you and see if you're clean or not. And if you're not clean, he's going to send you away in isolation.
Right, and so it's still showing a separation from God. You know, because of what you've done, this is your separation, not only from God but from your family as well. So you're taken away from everybody. You know, you're the dark for real. Nobody can even come and speak to you.
But the separation, though, cleanses you.
It should.
Well, yeah, it's supposed to.
Right.
Or it aids.
Or you die
in the cleansing of it.
I was thinking about how one thing that you talked about probably a few years ago at this point is with the cities of refuge, like somebody killed someone unintentionally. It was manslaughter. They didn't mean to kill that person. And you know, they have to go to the cities of refuge until the high priest dies. And then after the high priest dies, then they can come out. Because if they stay out, then the blood avenger can come out and kill them legally. The blood avenger can go and, can go out and slay them or whatever. So, but when you get separated, when you're put into that isolation, when you're put into that separation, like it's not like you're just, and I'm assuming that you should be doing some introspection about what happened.
Right.
Like, why is this? You know what I mean? Why is this thing
the
upon
idea?
Me?
Right.
Like, kind of getting that mentality and getting yourself lined up and seeking out Yahweh and doing the tefillah prayer. We were just talking about tefillah last week at the women's workshop, but doing that introspection and self-evaluation and trying to get rid of the sin that's in your life or whatever is in your life that's causing this plague to be upon you, because you know that examination is coming up soon. You already know in 7 days you're going to get examined again.
Yeah, by the priest. So you brought up the Levitical cities. You brought up the cities of refuge, which are part of the Levitical cities. So when you think about, and you're talking about something that I talked about before, in terms of how I would look at these cities of refuge, would be these places where you're going to be with where the priests are. So, I think about, when we go to, like, for instance, when we go to feasts and you're around all these people that have all of these kind of biblical ideas about things. When you're around a bunch of priests, you find yourself, you find your conversation really is about kind of priestly things.
Just like if you're at work and you're around all the people you work.
Yeah, whatever's around you the most, usually is going to dictate what you're talking about. So dealing with these Levitical cities, when you have these people who, I don't know about you, but I've never been in a situation where I've accidentally killed somebody. You kind of got to be in doing something where, there's some culpability connected to somebody killing somebody on accident. Right?
Unless you hit somebody.
Well, why'd you hit them?
Run over them with a car.
Hit by the car, or maybe they stepped out.
Yeah. There's those kind of accidents, but this wasn't talking about no accidents.
This was talking about you accidentally dropped something on somebody's head or something.
Or you accidentally hit somebody and they fell and then they
hit their head
off. They hit their head off or something.
Yeah,
like, but what you hit them for, though? You know what I mean? So not all cases, but I could probably a lot of cases where you accidentally kill somebody, you probably could have did something different in the first place to prevent that from happening. So when you look at this idea of isolation and then this review by the priest, yes, that introspection, must be part of it. Like, why is this happening? Why is it? How did I get here? What is it that brought me to this place? What could have been done? What could I have done differently? Right? What
could I have said differently?
How did this even happen in the first place? When we look at, for instance, Numbers. We look at Numbers chapter 12. We see an example of somebody who's actually plagued with the plague of leprosy.
Numbers what?
Numbers 12. Numbers 12. Numbers 12. Let's actually read that. Let's actually read Numbers 12, 1 through 15. Let's actually read that.
And Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married. For he had married an Ethiopian woman. And they said, hath Yahweh indeed spoken only by Moses? Hath he not spoken also by us? And Yahweh heard it. Now the man Moses was very meek above the men which were upon the face of the earth. And Yahweh spoke suddenly unto Moses and unto Aaron and unto Miriam, come out ye three unto the tabernacle of the congregation. And they three came out. And Yahweh came down in the pillar of the cloud and stood in the door of the tabernacle and called Aaron and Miriam. And they both came forth. And he said, hear my words. If there be a prophet among you, I, Yahweh, will make myself known unto him in a vision and will speak unto him in a dream. My servant Moses is not so, who is faithful in all mine house. With him will I speak mouth to mouth, even apparently, and not in dark speeches. And the similitude of Yahweh shall he behold. Wherefore then were ye not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? And the anger of Yahweh was kindled against him, and he departed. And the cloud departed from off the tabernacle. And behold, Miriam became leprous, white as snow. And Aaron looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. And Miriam said unto Moses, alas, my Lord, I beseech thee, lay not the sin upon us, wherein we have done foolishly, and wherein we have sinned. Let her not be as one dead, of whom the flesh is half consumed, whom he cometh out his mother's womb. And Moses cried unto Yahweh, saying, heal her now, O Elohim, I beseech thee. And Yahweh said unto Moses, if her father had but spit in her face, should she not be ashamed 7 days? Let her be shut out from the camp 7 days, and after that, let her be received in again. And Miriam was shut out from the camp 7 days, and the people journeyed. And the people journeyed not till Miriam was brought in again. And
okay, good. All right, so we see here an example of somebody being plagued with leprosy.
wow.
This person being Miriam, who is, speaking against motion, against Moses. Why has he got to be the one? Why can't we?
That's a Miriam and Aaron.
Why can't we? Well, I think that it's safe to say, based on who actually became leprous, who was in front with this rebellion against Moses. Aaron was there, and he didn't. He did
this 2 times.
He did the exact same thing. He didn't say nothing against what she said. He stood there by being silent. He co-signed on what she had said.
Yeah.
So he was guilty, but not as guilty. That's why he didn't become leprous. He should have been like, Miriam, you shut your mouth. You shut your mouth. Don't you talk about.
Quiet, woman.
Don't you talk about your brother like that. You shut your mouth. That's what he should have did, but he didn't do that. So we see that he did definitely get a strike against the situation. But Miriam was sitting up there and talking against Moses, right? And then you see what happened, right? Yahweh, he said
he got mad. He came every time I look at this, it says here, verse 5, then Yahweh came down in a pillar of cloud and stood at the door, and he called Aaron and Miriam. and they both came forth. So it's kind of like he came down,
Yeah.
physically moved the cloud from being over the Holy of Holies, physically moved the cloud to the outside and told them to come out.
Wow.
Basically called them out on what they was talking
And
about.
you actually don't see many times in the
That
scriptures,
cloud
in
moves
the
like
Torah specifically, where Yahweh's calling out to people
By name.
by name. He might say it unto Moses, right? Yahweh said unto Moses,
Actually,
right? That's
this
what
might be
you.
the only time
That's what you mostly gonna see is Yahweh said unto Moses, but you're not gonna see where him saying unto
somebody else,
somebody other than that many times.
He came down and was like, y'all come out here now.
Right, this time he did it.
They were getting really reprimanded.
It was like, it's time. It's about to go down.
So when you think about this now, again, we talking about leprosy now. Leprosy was the result of what she had did. She did what she did, and then leprosy was what was the punishment.
Yep.
So you think about this. What did she do?
Yeah.
Right? She had some feelings. She had some feelings inside of her, right? And she wanted to voice those feelings.
Just like how I like people to know what I think about things.
Right. So just like she was. So you keep on being like Miriam if you want to.
I'm not gonna be like Miriam.
You keep on being like Miriam if you want to. Right? You gonna sit up there and say, oh, she's just like I like to do. Meanwhile, we looking at a negative example of what not to be doing. Right? Something inside of her, there was something inside of her that had to come out. There was something inside of Miriam that had to come out. There wasn't nothing that was going to stop it from coming out. Right? It just came out.
Yep.
Just like vomit.
Oh my goodness.
Just like vomit. There ain't no, once that vomit starts to come, there ain't nothing that's going to stop it. It just comes out. Most times it's because you got some kind of bug or sickness in there and the body's pushing it out. All right? So she had this negative thing inside of her, Miriam did, where it just overtook her. Right? And then it just came out. It just projected outward from the inside of her. Right? Yeshua said, out of the abundance of the heart does the mouth speak, right? So that's what we see right there. All of this negativity that she had against Moses, and then as a result, what you say?
No, it's all that jealousy.
Jealousy, yeah, exactly. Right. So when we look at that, right, it gives us an example of something that she went out and then spoke all this negativeness about Moses, right? So that could kind of give us a point us in a direction as to something that could potentially be kind of a cause for leprosy. This is just negative speech towards others.
That's
something that
others, towards his faithful one.
Well, yeah.
Who I speak to face to face.
Yeah, I mean, he's letting them know, like, if I was to talk to you, it's gonna be in some kind of dream that you got to go and try to figure out what it is that I'm saying. But Moses don't got to think about nothing because I'm gonna say to him face to face.
Right there.
We don't need no milk. What does this dream mean? What do you think this dream means? He ain't dealing with Moses like that.
And then just like I had a couple dreams, and I'm like, we was just talking about dreams today.
What you think this might mean? Yeah, he might talk to you, but it's foggy though.
It's foggy.
It's not foggy when he talks to Moses, right? It's no.
Foggy when he talks.
Like, I'll get out here right now. Call out my name.
Right? Nobody got to even interpret this for you because I'm telling you right from my mouth.
Yeah. You weren't scared.
Right. Right.
He did say that. Yeah.
Right, like you don't even know who you're talking to.
Right.
That's
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
And trembling just the thought coming to the in your mind.
So to me, when I see all this, it causes me to think about the cause, potentially. Why is it that we have this thing about leprosy? Why is it this thing? Because we quick to sit up here and talk about people.
Oh, forgive me, Father.
We quick to sit up here. You ain't see what so and so was over there doing whenever the
Right.
you ain't just we'll get so and so to right to sit up there and be all up on whatever and so and such and such.
Mm-hmm.
And then again the remedy for it, the priest didn't do anything to the priest, don't do nothing to the person. You just look at him. The priest, all he do is inspect. All he do is look. He don't give him no medicine. He ain't mixing up no herbs or nothing. He ain't getting no special water to pour on him.
Right.
He ain't doing none of that. All he doing, he look at him.
Right.
And he say, you still got a little something right there. You go back on over there in 7 more days. And then when the 7 days over, come back, I'll look at you again. The thing that's healing you is that separation.
Mm-hmm.
This thing that's healing you, that's cleansing you, is that separation. So if we saying that there's some kind of connection between some type of ill speech and this thing, so it's relieving you of the ability to talk about anybody, because
anybody else.
Yeah.
You can't spread your little things that you spread because you by yourself. And I guess you by yourself long enough because you not to even think about these other people anymore, because you'll be, again, by yourself in that isolation. Right? So you can see how there could be a connection between this plague of leprosy and this need to speak evil or ill against others. And to me, I definitely see that connection, that isolation.
You can't talk to somebody about somebody. You can't, you're by yourself. But
it's going to cause you to look at yourself.
It shouldn't be just by yourself in isolation. You should be doing some introspection. Just like if you was in that city of refuge, you'd be surrounded by the priest, and that's all you would be hearing about is the scripture.
Again, it's just a picture, right? It's not a complete, so you definitely wouldn't be, but again, in that time of isolation, it's going to actually, it's going to cause you to do more than just sit up there and think about nothing, right? Angela, did you have something to say, or you just say?
No, I'm still stuck on Tomei for after childbirth. I'm over here going through.
I heard some crinkling. I thought you was about to say something.
No.
Okay, so when we look at that again, we see kind of this idea really of what we see with Miriam was rebellion, right? It was a rebellious attitude that she had towards what was going on. What do you say?
Dahlia said it's like being in timeout.
Right? Yeah, timeout. Yeah, I guess it could be timeout.
I guess because he was just a listener.
Well, we talk about Aaron in depth. I think with Aaron's involvement, you can't just look at this case to know why he didn't get the immediate judgment. You gotta look at his other faults.
Yeah, there's two other ones.
There's two other faults in which he stood by and didn't do what he was supposed to do to stop something from happening.
Idly by.
He stood idly by.
Right.
Do you want to say what they are?
Well, I didn't want to go too much into it because, you know what I mean? But we could just clearly see, just dealing with this example, Aaron, who he was, if there was any type of pecking order in Israel, it was Moses and then Aaron.
Aaron was like the priest.
He was definitely the number 2 guy on the list, period. There wasn't nobody besides Moses that could say, Aaron, could you go over there and take care? There wasn't nobody to do that for Aaron. But there was a whole bunch of people that Aaron could say that too, right?
Yeah, go get
that
water.
He could have been the one. Could you go over there and do this? Or come on over here and let me bless you. There wasn't nobody who Aaron could say, can you come over and bless me?
Yeah.
Right? Aaron was definitely the blesser and not the blessee.
Yes.
He had the ability to stop anything that was ever going on with Israel, including with his sister in this situation.
Yeah, he could have put a stop.
He could have said, "Wait a second, you tripping," or whatever they said in Hebrew at that time that was the equivalent of tripping. He could have said, "Sis, you tripping," in ancient Hebrew, right? Whatever that is. But he did not do that. He did not do it, and the punishments, the sin is spoken of in the plural, even though the judgment really was singular towards Mary. So they was both called to the door, even though we don't see no actions from Aaron. So we could just think about other places without going into it. We could just think of, well, I mean, we just want to cause.
Don't leave her hanging. Don't leave Ann hanging. How you really gonna leave her hanging like that?
Okay, so the golden calf situation is time number 1.
Because he said
golden calf time situation. So the people came up again. Moses is gone. Aaron's on top of the list. He's uno numero number 1. Moses is gone.
Right.
It was him and what's his name? Her.
But he was nowhere to be found in terms of
probably killed him.
Right. The sages say that he was killed by the people, and Aaron was scared for his life. So whenever they came up and talking about this whole golden calf thing, it fed his inability to lead properly, and he just did whatever they said do.
Right.
So he should have been like.
He should have stood up for
righteousness. The same thing, y'all are tripping again.
He should have stood up for righteousness right there, and he didn't do it. So
he was quiet.
So yeah, he didn't do nothing. In fact, he just went ahead and made this calf and fashioned it. It was probably some beautiful piece of artwork that he made for the purposes of false worship. Right. So that's time number 1, where Aaron should have stood up for righteousness and didn't. Time number 2 is right here with the situation with his sister. Time number 3. Now you put all these things together when you see the severity of his punishment with time number 3 when Moses strikes the rock. When Moses strikes the rock, Aaron was there. Aaron was there with Moses when Yahweh told Moses, go and speak to the rock. But Aaron was right there.
He knew. He knew what the commandment was.
And he didn't say Moses or grab his hand or
Yeah, he had an opportunity because he saw Moses hit it once, and then when Moses
he hit it 2 times. Right.
So he had 2 opportunities.
From that time, when that happened, Yahweh said to Aaron, go up into the mountain, take off all of your clothes, give them to your son, you're going to die. So he got a death sentence for what? For the same thing that he always do. Just letting stuff go on and not saying nothing. So we see that
from Moses striking a rock. Like,
yeah. So when
Moses is the one who struck the rock twice.
If all you
Aaron's
do,
the one who died.
If all you do is look at that situation in isolation, you're like, wow, Aaron didn't even do nothing. Moses is the one who did it.
Right.
But then when you look at his record, the record shows that he's good for not stepping in and not doing. He just being quiet.
He's coward.
He just being quiet all the time. Where, he got a death sentence. So when you look at that, the severe sentence, you have to look back and see what his record is. And his record is just that, right? So that's the thing with Aaron. Okay, so again, looking back at this whole thing about being shut up, about being closed up or in isolation, that word is cigar, where it says, let's see, back in Leviticus 13. Let's see where it's what's that, verse 4. I'm looking at different. Oh, shut up. Verse 4. Then the priest shall shut up him that hath the plague 7 days. My version says isolate. The word is, shut up or cigar. So that word cigar means to shut up. Shut up. And isolate is translated as isolate. Close up. What do you say?
Cigar. It's not like a cigar.
It will probably be something like this.
It's not a cigar, it's cigarette.
No, not like cigar. It's like cigar.
Oh, okay.
It's a Samek, a Gimel, and a Resh. It'll be something like this. So when we look at this word in the ancient, right, being surrounded by these thorns, which can be again protection from external things and things getting out. So it guards some things coming in and things going out. So in terms of influence, right? You're not dealing with outside influence, or you're not influencing anyone else, right? You will see that just in the Samek, in terms of this thing that surrounds us thorns. The Gimel is the thing that's talks about rocking or movement, travel of man. So we're talking about this thing that's giving you this idea of being shut up or isolated. You can see that in here, this thing that kind of inhibits the walk of man. Right? This thing that inhibits the walk of man. Cigar. Being closed up and shut up. So again, when we look at that, we look at the only thing that we see in terms of something that remedies the situation is this isolation. And when we're thinking about it and connecting it to how we looked at Miriam, where if she would have been thinking about things really from not from that carnal kind of selfish perspective, right? Then she never would have went ahead and said those things that was said, right? So when we think about leprosy, and when we looked at these verses where it talks about if you have these bright spots, if you have this kind of active, these active sores that contain this stuff inside that's ready to come out, right? If it's active, it's ready to come out, it can come out and infect other people, then you're unclean, right? But if that thing, if you just have the signs that it used to be there, then you are clean, right? So in other words, if you have this dis-ease, these infection inside of you, and it's kind of oozing out and it's ready to burst and infect others, then of course you're unclean. You need to be taken away, right? But if all that's left is the residue or the fact that it used to be there, then you're clean. So thinking about this in terms of we comparing this back and forth to Miriam, now that thing happened to her. Everybody knew that it happened, right? Yahweh said he compared it to a father spitting in the daughter's face, right? Everybody seen the judgment happen, just let it be so, right? So the effects of that thing will be forever remembered. And they didn't move while she was in that state, right? So everybody knew everything stopped. Everybody knew what had happened. So the effects will always be seen, but she's not always going to be right in this state of defilement, even though everybody knows.
Put in the scripture, we know what
right,
happened.
forever.
How many years later is this?
Right, forever.
You know not to do that.
So in other words, the effects could always be known, but it don't necessarily mean that it always got to be something that's present. So I think when we look at this, we have to be kind of remember about this thing, because we don't really know what leprosy really looks like now, what they would actually call it today. If we got lepers walking around among us and you don't even know, you know what I mean? We don't know what it necessarily is. It could be something that looks like acne or something. You know what I mean? Bright spots and whiteness. You know what I mean? It's like, but what we can do is put these things together and think about, what causes might have been, and do things differently in terms of when we think about this whole rebelliousness against. When we look at how Miriam had that rebelliousness towards Moses and what he was doing, and her need to be kind of push herself in the front, and so on and so forth. So when we look at what Yeshua did, right? When we look at what Yeshua did, when Yeshua, we going to Matthew, but not that bad. We're going to Matthew chapter 8. we look at what Yeshua did, and we can see that, again, we looked at what happened with the priest and with leprosy. The priest didn't heal you from leprosy. You went away and you came back, and either you was healed or you wasn't healed. But something that we learn about, something that validates Yeshua is the fact that he healed lepers. He healed lepers, right? It was something that the priest didn't even do. Nobody healed lepers. Yahweh was the one who healed the leper. You went away and he healed you while you was gone. You came back, and then everything was good. But with Yeshua, we look at Matthew chapter 8, 1 through 4.
And when he had come down from the mountain, great multitudes followed him. And behold, a leper came to him and bowed down to him, saying, Master, if you are willing, you can make me clean. And he stretched out his hand and touched him, saying, I am willing, be cleansed. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And Yeshua said to him, see that you tell no one, but go show yourself to the priest and present an offering, the offering that Moshe commanded, for a testimony to them.
Okay, so when we look at this situation, there's many things that's going on in these few verses. First of all, the fact that this person came and it says that he worshipped Yeshua, which is, let me see what that word is. Yeah, great. Interesting. Matthew 8. What is that? Verse 2.
Mine says bow down to him.
Oh, proskuneo.
Prostrate?
Yeah. It means meaning to kiss, like a dog licking his master's hand, to fawn, to crouch to, that is literally figuratively prostrate oneself in homage, to do reverence, to adore, to worship. So he worshiped Yeshua in every sense of the word. Which is
he really wants something from him.
He really wanted something from him, but when we see, for instance, this is interesting when we think about Revelation, when John began to worship the one that was talking to him and giving him the message. And the person said, wait, don't worship me, right? So we see here a situation where this person was treating Yeshua as Yahweh in a physical way in terms of worshiping him. But he was also treating him like Yahweh in the fact that he wanted to be healed from leprosy, which came from Yahweh in the first place. Right? Which equivalent is like if I punish Hiskey and then he goes to like the neighbor and says, can you take me off punishment? Like it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense for him to go to somebody, to the person who goes to somebody else than the person that actually administered the punishment in the first place. Right? So
it's like if you get convicted of a crime, you go to another country's court and be like, can you get me off?
Right. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, you can't. It's like, because it's two kingdoms. It's like the kingdom on earth and then there's the kingdom in heaven. So you're not going to go to another kingdom and try to get off from punishment of the kingdom of heaven.
Right. So it's essentially what we see going on is that when we think about the idea of the deity of Yeshua, this is something that we look at. First of all, when we look at understanding that leprosy was something, again, we're not just calling Yeshua a priest whenever he does this thing with leprosy. We're likening him unto the Most High when we're putting it on him to heal this thing that's called leprosy that only Yahweh heals. So this man was doing that, first of all, by worshiping him, where you're not supposed to be worshiping people in the first place. But he's doing it doubly when he's asking to be made clean by Yeshua. And then Yeshua did not stop him from worshiping him, and he didn't try to say to him, well, I can't do this, because he obviously could do it.
He wasn't like,
because it's Yeshua.
Don't do that, because it's something I could do to help you.
And then he went and touched him. The priest, he would look at the person and inspect them, but it was just like kind of a visual thing. He wouldn't dare touch the man, because then he would become unclean himself. But Yeshua reached out to this person. He said, Yeshua put forth his hand and touched him, saying, I will be thou clean. Oh, first the man said, if thou wilt, thou canst make me clean. So he had that faith from the beginning. I know you can do it. I know that you're able to do this thing for me. Can you do it?
So he had a faith that, to begin with, that
in who Yeshua was as being Yahweh, the Most High in the flesh, giving him the honor and respect that's only due to the Most High, two different ways in terms of actually worshiping him and seeking to be healed of leprosy. I mean, he didn't just have like a cold or whatever, right?
He was actually a leper.
He was a leper. And he was cleansed straight away. But again, we just went there just to look at the connection between the fact that, you know, the priest didn't heal you from leprosy. He just sent you away in isolation and allow Yahweh to either heal you or to not to heal you, to allow that isolation to either cause your heart to be turned and cause your heart to actually change, or it don't do nothing and then you get 7 more days.
Yeah, the priest couldn't heal you. It just examined you.
Right. So here,
well, I mean,
this verse is right here put Yeshua above the priest and equal with Yahweh.
Because he's able to do it. But the one thing is, now, does Yeshua become unclean because this, you know, he touched that leper, and then whenever that lady who had the issue of blood came up to him, she still touched him.
She was healed, right?
She got healed.
So that's when you think about that again. When you think about this idea of Tameh, was Yeshua like ceremonially unclean by that happening? According to everybody that was around, when they seen that, when they looked at what happened, in their minds, they would say, yes.
He got unclean because he.
In their minds, according to the old covenant, would he have been ceremonially unclean or Tameh when that happened? Just by him touching the that leper there, you would say yes, he was ceremonially unclean. But when we think about what actually happened, when he touched him, he made the person clean. So the thing I always think about is when you watch those Dawn commercials, when that Dawn touched that greasy water and that grease just spreads out as soon as the Dawn touches the greasy water, right? That Dawn is making that dirty water clean. But that's what's going on when Yeshua is touching these people. So is he Tameh when he touches?
Because it will not be because he's pouring out.
I'm saying that it's not causing him to be unclean.
Right.
but it's causing him to be kind of viewed as unclean just by simple facts of the edicts of
but
the Torah commandments.
That's another way though. Because the last time when you was talking about it, you posed that question.
I'm saying that Tom May is not sin. I'm saying Tom May is not sin.
You said that.
Wait a second. Let me say what I'm saying. Maybe then you don't know what I'm saying. Maybe. All right. Good. I'm saying that if we say that Yeshua was Tom May, we're not saying that Yeshua he sinned because he didn't sin.
He did.
He was without sin. Mm-hmm. But what I'm saying is that when you look at the commandments, it told you it told the woman, as far as if she was in her issue of blood, not to touch a holy thing. Because why? Because you be making those things unclean. But with Yeshua, but we have to understand who Yeshua is, right? No dirt can make Yeshua dirty. He's gonna make that dirt clean. So that's what's actually happening. But when we look at it, it seems as if the opposite is true, just from looking at it. But he's not becoming unclean. But you do say though, looking back at Isaiah, that he takes upon himself the uncleanness of the people. That is what he does. So he is becoming unclean because he's taking upon himself the uncleanness of the people. But I would say that at the same time. I would say that person. When we think about Isaiah, I guess typically we think about Isaiah as a moment and not necessarily a kind of a continual thing. Like he continually took on sin and dirt and uncleanness as he walked. That's what he did. That's how he was able to heal the people, because he took upon himself as he walked the earth. I don't think that it's wrong to think about it either way. I would say I don't think that it's wrong to think about the fact that he continually was doing that, and not just being a moment. But what I am saying is that we cannot say that as he walked in literal uncleanness. Why can't we? I thought you said that before about when people, because there's two thoughts. There's two thoughts on the matter, and we talked about this at length before. The dawn effect, and then the effect of him becoming unclean through being touched. And because the uncleanness isn't associated with sin, he could become made unclean and sin not. I'm saying what I'm saying today on November the 4th. He always he will take any side of the argument. Look, Tony, the next time you teach on this and you take the other side of the argument and argue that side, I'm going to bring back November the 4th, 2017, when you took the other side of the argument. Like you take those sides. He already talked about this before. He took the other side of the argument. On today, I'm saying that I don't know how we can look at Yeshua, the cleanser, and look at him as being unclean.
That's like getting in the shower and taking a shower. You're cleansed, right? But when you get out the tub, is it the tub's fault? I mean, it's just like. But he does take upon himself the uncleanness of the people. But he's holy.
Right, but
what about like when Paul says
what's happening? He is doing that. He is doing that. He's taking away your dirt. And he's taking it upon himself. And he's taking it upon him. He's taking it upon himself.
He's the
holy one. I'm saying as he's walking around, I'm not sure that stuff is. I don't know how I say that Yahshua is becoming dirty necessarily by taking away my dirt.
But isn't he the lamb? With even before he gave the ultimate sacrifice of dying, he's still the lamb, right? And so he's still the sacrifice. So if he's touching and healing, he's still able to. He's still the lamb who is being sacrificed. He's just he's the living sacrifice. Just like Paul talks about being a living sacrifice. So I see both sides. I don't think there is an argument. I think it's both. You know, I think he's touching and taking the uncleanness, but being the lamb or the living sacrifice, and is able to recompense the uncleanness and give healing. And then ultimately he's the sacrifice who gave forgiveness for transgression of sin.
I mean, there's a verse.
I think that find a verse. I think that here, can you just find the verse?
I found it.
Okay, well, let me say what I'm gonna say, and then I'm gonna let you say the verse. I think that when we think about, I guess when I think about it, I'm thinking about Yahshua as the light. I'm thinking about Yeshua as the light. So if you got dirt and I'm ridding you of your dirt, when I get rid of the darkness, I get rid of your darkness by overcoming it with light. So I'm not necessarily putting darkness on myself. I'm eradicating the darkness with my overwhelming light. So when you think about it, I mean, this is how I'm thinking about it right just today, right? So when I think about it in that way, I don't see the transference necessarily of dirt. I'm seeing the eradication of the dirt by the light.
Or is it that the dirt gets or the darkness gets consumed by the light? Of course.
It's being it's being
it just
consumed.
Gets taken over. The light is so much greater than the darkness that the darkness can't stand.
No, it can't.
It just gets eradicated.
Yeah.
It gets wiped out.
That's how I'm looking at it today. But what's your verse?
But my verse going along with what Angela said, for he was foreknown before the foundation of the world, but has appeared in these last days for the sake of you. That's 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 20. And I guess where I'm going with that is that, you know, the sin was already here. The leprosy, the judgment, everything was already here. It was already foreknown. And now Yahshua was already slain whenever the sin was even committed to begin with. And that he appeared now for our sake, because it was already something that was done in heaven. It was already done in heaven. It was already something that was known was going to happen. And it was already done as far as Yahweh saw it. He sees the end from the beginning. He already knows what's going to happen. It's already something that's happened, but we got to live it out every single day. Yeah. We got to live it out. And so he had to come in the fullness of time for our sake, even though this was something that was already done from the foundation of the world.
Well, I mean, but you can't say that it didn't have even though it was already done and it was a done deal, it had to be manifested in the physical.
So whenever it talks about in Isaiah chapter 53, where it talks about how he was disfigured, and
yes, that's where I was going.
And pleased, right? That he was all these things, and in my thought process at least, it was before he even took upon himself upon the stake, right? Well, the sin of the people.
That's he was these things.
And then whenever it talks about in verse 12, 53, verse 12, where it says, and he was numbered with the transgressor, and he himself bore the sin of many and interceded for the transgressors. That word bore, we talked about this when we did the Day of Atonement. When you was talking about the Day of Atonement, Tony, the word bore would be the kafar. He took upon himself, or he pardoned the sins of the people. He took it himself. So I'm just saying, kind of like the red heifer, of course, effect, where everything becomes unclean somehow in the process of this, but then it's all to make things clean again. That he's kind of like that mystery as well.
Yeah. So what I was saying was is that you could look at, when you think about Isaiah 53, you could look at that as a process that continually happened, or an event. Like, now people who would say the process, now you have people who say that was a process that continually happened, who take it so far to say that Yeshua actually was a physical life.
Yeah. Which is what you were saying that people were saying.
Well, I mentioned it, but I didn't say that I prescribed.
This is what happens when you study the scripture every single day and hour and night.
I don't prescribe to the fact that Yeshua actually was a leper, but this is the same. This is the extension of the thought process of Yeshua taking on this.
So, the sins of the people.
The sins, yeah.
Something has to happen. Somebody takes upon themselves the sins. Something has to happen. But there's the two schools of thought that the altar can't be defiled. So anything that touches the altar gets cleansed because the altar can't be defiled, or that the altar actually takes upon itself the sins and thereby.
I mean, the other thing you gotta think about is that when we look at Hebrews, where it talks about the heavens, the innermost place in the heavens must be cleansed. Why? Because of all of the sin that was atoned for in the heavens. So just like the high priest would cleanse the physical sanctuary, the heaven of heavens also was cleaned by Yeshua because of the sins that he takes in there. So, but Yeshua didn't have to deal with any uncleanness before he does his work. He doesn't have to deal with any uncleanness before he does his work. Just like the physical priest, he has to make an atonement for his own self. So if there was any type of uncleanness that Yeshua had to deal with, it don't really talk about that. It talks about the opposite, the fact that he was not like the Levitical priest where he has to deal with his own sin.
Though, but that was sin. That wasn't uncleanness. That wasn't
that
wasn't Tom.
Listen, I have the ability to step back from any. You keep on bringing up like something like I can't step back from what I said a year ago. So I'm stepping back. I'm stepping back from that. I'm stepping back from what I said, and I don't have any problems with stepping back with it either, based on the fact that when I think about Yeshua as the light, he is the light. Yes. And whether we're talking about sin or uncleanness, he doesn't have any darkness in him.
Yes. But is there darkness in just having a baby?
Well, a sin offering was brought, whether it was male or female. A sin offering was brought, and you didn't do it. All you did was have a baby, but a sin offering was brought.
Listen, you need to stop.
It wasn't just you wasn't just bringing just an offering. A specific sin offering was brought if you had a baby. So I'm not saying that it was a sin what you did, but a sin offering was definitely brought.
Is that because all men are born in sin and shaped in iniquity?
I wouldn't say that. Based on what? Based on.
I mean that is that the reason that a sin offering is required?
I wouldn't say that myself, because I wouldn't say that all men are born in iniquity and born in shape. And then what's the verse? How's the verse say?
David says that in
51.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, it might be like verse 2 or 3. It says it.
Yeah.
Right. We could talk about that. I don't know if we want to talk about it right now, but
No. I'm just throwing that out there because it was a thought. It was a thought that popped into my head regarding why a sin offering when a child is born.
Yeah. I guess somebody. Huh? I mean, I guess it kind of does when you think about it. Why was the sin offering brought? I'm saying no to the whole being shapen in iniquity thought process, because when you think about sin is a transgression of the law. Sin is something that was done outside of the boundaries that Yahweh created.
But aren't we carrying, sometimes we're carrying the sins of a father, right? Like the sins of our ancestors.
Maybe the consequences, but the actual sin, I would say no.
Okay.
Because when you look at, say for instance, Ezekiel 16, where it talks about it goes down the line. There was a wicked man who was wicked, and he did all these things that's contrary to Yahweh. Then he had a son that was righteous, and he did all of the things that Yahweh liked. And then he had a son that was wicked. Like, it goes back and forth. I don't know if it's Ezekiel 16. I have to double check that. But he goes back and forth about, the sons and the iniquities of their fathers, right? You die because of your own sin, not because of the sin of your father. And that's an example that's given because it talks about, let me see. I mean, it talks about just that. So we might have consequences of sins that our fathers had done. But we dealing with the consequences not as if that sin is on you. Right? We look, we look at where we are even right now. Even right now, because of what our fathers have done, look at the situation that we are in. Not as if it's literal sin, but it's the consequences of sin. Our forefathers transgressed, and therefore now all of these curses now are upon us. But the curses, even in and of themselves, is not actual sin. It is the result of the sin. So are there consequences that carry on for generations? Yes. But is that actual sin? No.
Born in iniquity is an actual sin.
Right, but we can't look at Paul. I mean, we can't look at David in his moment of sorrow based on what he had done.
He physically sinned.
He physically did something and was sorrowful as a result of it. And in that, he said something. So because of what he said in that moment, I mean, we have to understand that the scriptures, in terms of, we base our thoughts on scripture based on what thus says Yahweh. We have to make a distinction between something that's inspired, which would be like the David being inspired by Yahweh and saying a certain thing, as opposed to Yahweh saying, thus says Yahweh. Right? Yahweh's not teaching us the doctrines of original sin through Psalms 51. Psalms 51 is David pleading for forgiveness based on some sin that he did. Right? It's not teaching us because, okay, so this is something, now see, this is what I'm talking about. Okay, I'll talk about it later, but this is something that we looked at even on Sukkot that I never thought about specifically before. In Genesis chapter 2. And this is exactly what we're talking about. First of all, because I can find it readily, we can look at Genesis chapter 3, where it says, now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field, which Yahweh Elohim had made. Subtle. The serpent was more subtle. If we go back to chapter 2, in Genesis, where it says, where does it say that they were naked and they were not ashamed? Oh, it's not even that far. It's verse 225. And they both were naked, and the man and his wife were not ashamed. Here, let me see which one of these words. I'm pretty sure it's naked. I mean, it's ashamed. Let me double check. 2:25. Naked. Naked. Naked is the same word as subtle, cunning, crafty. It's the same word. So the thing that was inside of the serpent that caused him to be able to have all of that trickery against the woman is the same word that's spoken of Adam and Hava as being naked yet not ashamed.
So they was
also crafty. But there wasn't shame, there wasn't the negative aspects of it wasn't connected to it. It's the same word. So again, when we think about this whole idea of sin and being born and just being a sinner, you're born with the ability to sin. But it don't make you a sinner until you do the thing. Adam and Hava was crafty just like the serpent was. But they didn't deal in their craftiness to a negative degree until now they did the sin. And now they're looking around like, wait a second. Now, at the end of the day, right, it talks about them being naked and ashamed. And then they made the clothes.
It is really the same, huh?
You think I'm making it up?
Well, I mean, I don't look. Listen, everybody on the line.
You check me.
Everybody on the line needs to check behind. You don't just take it and run with it.
I ain't just talking gibber jabber. It is the same. Right? So they was in them was this ability to falter.
Yeah.
But it wasn't used in that way.
Yeah.
At that time. So even little Moshe right now,
he came out.
He's perfect. He's perfect. Why? Because he ain't did nothing yet. He ain't transgressed. But the other one? Not so much.
You know what, Ariel?
Not so much. Why? Because of her actions. Because of the fact that she does things on purpose. Don't do that. Don't do that. I know she sat up there and did something to Moshe talking about he did something. And he can't even move right.
She said, baby.
Meanwhile, the thing that she did, she trying to put on him. Because she's a little liar. A little sinner. But that's only because he did it. Not because, but him, what did he do? Nothing. Right? So we're born with the propensity, we're born with the ability to, and the probability that we will.
But not the actual sin.
But not the actual sin, because Again, we have to be able to think these things all the way out. If we
Yeshua-
say that you're just by simple fact of being a human being, you're a sinner, Yeshua was a sinner too then. Because he was a human being.
And he was born.
And he was born.
So was he born into iniquity or was he just born?
We
Yeah.
were born.
Ain't no way around it. Ain't no way around it.
That's why.
Ain't no way around it. You
That's
can't.
why the
you
Catholics
can't,
fixed their little problem
right.
that they had.
You can't
with the
say
original
that
sin.
man was born in iniquity and say that Yeshua was without sin because he was a human being. Period.
But he was
Point blank.
He had a
He was.
Yahweh was his father.
I know, but he was a human being though.
He was created in the womb.
As
He
a human.
He wasn't created with her blood. It was
How do you know that wasn't her blood?
Nah,
because he was pure.
So you don't believe he was a human being?
Because Mary.
Who don't believe he was a human being?
I know.
I believe he was the.
He had some other kind of blood. That's what you
the
just
Father,
said.
Son, and Holy Spirit. But that's what I believe. But he wasn't by the man. I won't agree that just because he was a human being that we were not born without iniquity.
I know, but that,
biblically speaking,
the Catholics fixed the problem
to repent
because the Catholics say that Miriam was
also.
But the Catholics say that Miriam was also a virgin.
you gotta understand.
No, she was a
virgin. Miriam was also miraculously
conceived.
Miraculously
she was a virgin, but she had sin. She was born in iniquity like all of us.
But if she was born in iniquity, then she passes her iniquity to Yeshua when he comes out.
Yep.
But that's why the Catholics. But that's why. Inez, but that's why. But that's why the Catholics fixed the problem because the Catholics say.
Understand.
The Catholics say that Miriam, Mary,
was not born with
he was born of the Spirit.
I'm sorry.
I believe he was. I'm going to
so she was just a surrogate mother. Then.
I know, but you have to. This is what
He was.
Listen. This is what you have to do.
Right, exactly.
He was not coming.
You have to.
So
Hold on.
Through the
Hold on.
So she was just a surrogate,
which I was talking about.
the X and Y.
Hold on.
He was
Because that was just like saying God had sex with Mary.
Listen.
Yeah. Basically, that's what you're saying.
This is what you have to do whenever you. This is what you have to do when you come up with these doctrines, right? You have to be able to think them all the way to the nth degree. That's what you're not doing when you say what you're saying. That the end result of what you're saying is that he really wasn't even human to begin with.
I believe that
you might could say
he was made in flesh, but I don't believe he was born the way we were born at all.
Okay, but I don't know what you're basing that off of.
Because he's God. That's why he can't be born. He can't be born.
This is very interesting.
He can't be born with iniquities.
This is very interesting.
Or he would have a sin.
I know, but see, but what's going on? What I can see going on is this thought process of original sin is forming your doctrine for you.
Well,
so you're saying since
the Bible says we're born, all of us.
No, wait a second. No, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. Where does it say that?
We're born in iniquity.
The whole race is.
Everybody.
David's talking about his own self. Find the verse.
All of us are born.
Pull it up.
Find it, man.
It says
Psalm. I'll find it for you. It's Psalm 51.
I meant to say Psalm.
Find it, man. Find
it. The doctrine is shaping your thought process.
We have to be reborn again for that simple purpose.
Well, I just told you 2 reasons why that can't be so. But the biggest part of that is the fact that when you say that, you fix it. You fix it because you're saying that Yeshua wasn't even human.
Well, he was born in flesh, but he
so
wasn't
born in flesh.
He was miraculously, and the only one miraculously born.
If he wasn't,
none of us were miraculous.
If he wasn't human, then he can't be our salvation.
You're saying he's not born. I said he wasn't born.
But you said he didn't have Mary's blood.
You're saying that only just to take away his humanness, to take away his sin.
But I don't understand.
Well,
you said he didn't have Mary's blood.
Well,
I'm saying that he had.
You started this.
Well, he came through.
You started this,
Angela.
But
he was.
I know I started it. I'm sorry. I repent.
This is
He was placed in her.
I repent. Let me just say this. I'm not arguing for.
Hold on. Let Angela say something. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm not arguing for original sin. I just threw out a thought that I had regarding that scripture. I'm going to research so that I can be assured as to what I believe and why I believe regarding that thought of original sin. But what I wanted to say right now is that, you know, before I came into this Hebraic understanding of who Yeshua was and how, you know, just this walk, I had done some research and had come to the conclusion that the fetal blood doesn't mix with the maternal blood during birth or during the mother's time of carrying the baby. The blood doesn't mix. Scientifically, that is so. The blood doesn't mix. But what does happen is when the baby's born, it takes cells from the mother. From the mother's placenta. There are cells that are taken. So if there's sin in our DNA, then he wouldn't have been able to be born naturally without taking cells from his mother's DNA. So that would cause me to step back and question that thought process and to go further in scripture to come to a better understanding. So I'm just going to say that there. I don't know.
If a human being is created, women have eggs. That egg that was in that woman was fertilized by the spirit of Yahweh. So right there, you got a mixture right there that happens.
Unless he put the egg in her and the sperm in her. How do we know? I mean, could he not have put the egg and the sperm?
Yeah, she was already placed. He was placed in her with it.
Then they say she was still a virgin.
Now wait a second. We have two genealogies given. There's two genealogies given. Under this thought process, we could take those and just rip them out of the scriptures because there's no reason for them.
What is that?
We connect Yeshua to a specific tribe. Why do we do that?
Because he's the mother and mother.
Why do we do that?
The families.
I know, but wait a second.
Listed under Joseph's genealogy, just like he's listed under Mary's, and yet Joseph is not his biological father.
No, but what I'm saying is that being true, both is covered on both ends.
Right.
It's covered under his adopted father and it's covered under his mother. They both go back.
Right.
So there's no questions that could be made as to where he came from.
Well, he came through the matrix of a woman from the.
What I'm saying is that if we take away his humanity, there's not even a purpose for that information to be given. These are all things like you do the research, but all I'm saying is that these are all things that we have to take into account. If we take away his humanity, why do we got that there? What's the point of it?
But the point, the major point is that he was born, and he did not have this quote unquote original sin.
If he was born,
because then he would have.
If he wasn't a human being, so what if he lived a perfect life if he wasn't a human being?
Yeah.
Who cares? Who cares if he's 100% Elohim? So what if he walked this life and then sinned? What else was he supposed to do? He was the Most High. Add that to the list. Put that on the list too.
But we all know that a baby, when they're born, they have the propensity to sin, and that propensity.
And then they grow up and then they do it.
And that nature.
That's the same thing. That's the same thing that happened with Adam and Hava. Nothing happened to them except for awareness when they ate that fruit. They was already like they was. The thing that they didn't do is eat from the tree of life. They was stopped from eating from the tree of life. That was the thing that they got stopped from doing. Everything else that happened was just awareness and separation. Awareness and separation. But they was born however they was born. And then that state that they was not eating of it is what passed on to you and I. Nothing was physically changed with them except for awareness and separation. They were separated from Yahweh, and now they had awareness of outside influence. But inside of them, what made Hava say, Yahweh's not telling me everything? This is before the fall. This man that I came from is not giving me all the information. This serpent got something. This is before the fall. This serpent got something that's very maybe this tree does. Maybe this tree is good for food. This is before the fall. What's making her do that? Because she was born in iniquity, shaped in iniquity. She was perfect. Just like my old Moshe is perfect. But then he's going, some situation gonna come up.
Sin came down from the heavens.
No, but what I'm describing to you is Adam and Hava before the fall. And they're already before the fall questioning the Most High.
Because somebody came down and put that thought process in their head.
I know, but they're pure.
Yeah,
why didn't they say, no, I'm not going for this? Because you can't say they was in a fallen state. They wasn't. They was perfect. It was the way that Yahweh created them, perfect.
Right, just like in the heavens they were created perfect until Satan himself decided to take pride in himself and create a little thug thing going up there. Thugged out there. Right. There's a little crips up there.
All I'm saying,
at Tony's face, he has to bear with us.
All I'm saying is that when
he has to bear with us. This is where your patience. This is the perseverance of the saints.
She said,
all I'm saying is that we have to be able to think about all these things when we think about these doctrines. Nobody told Adam and Hava how to transgress the Most High. Nobody put that in them. It wasn't something that was born in them. They was born the same way. Everything was the same. The only thing that happened was now they have this other opportunity to take advantage of. Let's see what that is. Was it sin? Was it sin? When they had the thought process, the carnal mind is not sin. The carnal mind leads unto sin. My desire, they had the carnal mind. My desire to pacify my flesh is not sin. Because I want to pacify my flesh, that's not sin. When I do it,
what about the scripture in is it in Matthew where it talks about if you have thought to kill, that you have in effect that is the same as having killed? You know what I'm talking about? I'll find it.
Yeah.
If you hate your neighbor, then you are guilty of murder.
Right.
You lust after a woman, although you didn't do it. Yeah, it's the same process.
But
I think it's if you.
So if we get to the place of hate, if I dislike my neighbor, it's one thing. If I hate my neighbor, right, I'm taking it to the nth degree. When we look at and again,
it's 1 John 3. It's 1 John 3:15.
I think what you're talking about is in Matthew.
Yeah, that's not right. It is. When you look up on a woman to lust after her.
Right. So even that is a point of a manifestation of something. Like I can look at somebody and have a passing glance, but once I'm asphyxiated with this thought, now I took it a step further.
Right.
Which is giving in to the carnal mind. The carnal mind wants me to take it that step further, where at first I might look and be like, oh, that's interesting, right? But then now, oh, wow, what happened if I would? You know what I mean? You take it to the next step. But what I'm saying is that the carnal mind is just that, you wanting to, now you could cut it off, though. It could be cut off where you haven't taken it to the next step. Like where it talks about in
Matthew 5:28.
Yeah.
Okay.
He does that with murder. He does it. He's taking this a step further with all of these. 5:28. He talks about committing adultery. There's the same chapter. He talks about hate is same as murder.
So in Romans 8:7 it says the mind governed, let me read it in the King James. It says because the carnal mind is enmity against God, for it is not subject to the law of God, neither indeed can be.
Right, so it's always going to cause you, your carnal mind is always going to cause you to step outside of the boundaries. It's always going to cause, if you follow it, it's always going to cause you to step out of bounds. But I think the perfect example is when you look at James, I'm gonna get ready to be done with this here, bro. Let me just flip over to James real quick.
What about Galatians 4:4 when he said, "But when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth His Son." So forth would be, what would forth mean? If He sent forth it, wouldn't it be a manifestation?
What you mean?
I mean, like He sent forth His Son, born to a woman, born under the law. So I mean, He sent forth. That would be still like overshadowing, like when Gabrielle told Mary that she was going to conceive this child. So how did this child get there?
I'm not saying that y'all didn't put Yeshua in he didn't impregnate or make Mary pregnant with the life that turned out to be Yeshua. But what I'm saying is that he was a human and he was Elohim both at the same time. And if he wasn't that, if you say that he wasn't that, then there's many problems that you create by saying that he wasn't.
That he wasn't what?
That he wasn't human.
I just don't think he.
I know, but you can't. I know, but.
I mean, because even when the
angel was placed there,
but and when the other ones came down, the other angels, they were transformed into humans.
Well, one example here. Let me read this in James. Let me read this verse in James. James chapter 1. James chapter 1:13 says, "Let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of Elohim. For Elohim cannot be tempted with evil, neither be any man. But every man is tempted." Oh, verse 13. This is the verse right here. "But every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lusts and enticed. Then, when lust hath conceived, it brings forth sin, and sin, when it is finished, brings forth death. Do not err, my beloved brother." So it's giving you there the process of sin, right? When you're drawn away by your own lust and enticed. And then when that lust is conceived, now you have sin. Now you talking about Yeshua, right? Yeshua, we see one time in the whole Bible when Yeshua seems as if he's going against what Yahweh said.
When he said back from me.
Why would he say that?
So,
Then he said, not my will, but your will.
Yeah.
Not the will of his carnality, which don't want to go through whatever it is that he's going to go through.
I'm not disagreeing that he was human. My thing is,
but what I'm saying is that when you say that, when you say what you're saying, you are saying. So you're saying, I'm not saying that he's not human, but I'm giving him these characteristics of not being human.
He's the Holy Spirit.
I know, but you're saying that
here as a human
you're
being,
saying that, but you affirm that he is not human.
No,
when you say
I
that
don't think
he don't have no blood
because his blood is pure.
That's the same.
It can't be tainted. It couldn't be tainted.
No, but your only reason why you think it's tainted is because of this doctrine of original sin. We could go back to the creation of the thought process of this original sin. It's a doctrine that was introduced into what we know as Christianity, when before that nobody was talking about original sin. So you're only
maybe we did.
Yes, you're only saying that based on the fact of this thought process that his blood is dirty and it can't be the same.
With any,
right.
Well, I was gonna say, like, you know how, like, when you come into a Hebraic walk or Hebraic understanding, then what happens is there's a lot of things that you had packed in your bag, so to speak, that came from your prior understanding, but you don't know that it's there until you study Torah. And as you start to study, like we're doing today, then these things come out, and that's when we have to unpack them and really look at them. But the thing is that if we get emotional about it, and we start, defending and shutting down before we unpack it, then we can't really examine it to see if it's accurate or not.
True. No, I said maybe I do need to go back and do that study.
Because you don't realize, you don't think about why you even think about a thing. But me looking at it, I've seen it already, and then I hear what you're saying, and I see the only reason why you're saying that is because of all these things before.
Well,
like if I can see how you got to what you're saying, oh, you're saying that because I have to do this. I got to get this blood out because the blood is dirty. But what I'm trying to say is that the blood ain't dirty. The blood's not dirty when you sin. That's the problem. The baby ain't did nothing. He can't even think. He gonna go through life and not remember this time because his brain ain't even fully activated yet. So how is he a sinner? He gonna sin. He gonna sin as soon as he know how to do anything. He gonna sin.
What was that first? Psalm 51:6 about where faith and iniquities.
That's David. That's David.
Speaking of David,
he's the one that's saying. He's the one that's saying it, and he's saying it in regards to what he just did. Now there's two things that you can say about that. Either he just in his remorse of what he did in terms of Bathsheba, I think that even that chapter is captioned, I think, and connected to what happened with Bathsheba. But that's what's going on. So there's either that's just purely his sorrow and remorse for what he done, or some commentators even speak to the fact that possibly he was actually shaping in iniquity, as if to say that his mother wasn't his dad's wife where he came from. And so then he literally would have been born in iniquity because he was this illegitimate.
But the fallen state of man, what I'm saying, is the fallen state.
Right. So the other thing that I tried to bring to your attention is the fact that we witnessed Adam and Hava acting in a way that could be equated to the fallen state prior to them being fallen. And then that's why I even looked at that word naked, which is the same word as crafty, as of where the serpent took that craftiness and used it for negativity.
Mm-hmm.
But that same word, that same thing that was in the serpent, was also in Adam and Hava prior to being fallen, but they weren't ashamed. They were naked, but they weren't ashamed. And then after the fall, they was naked and they was ashamed, so much so that they covered up, right? Because they took that thing that they was birthed with and they used it for evil. So just like when we look at these,
and that's when it happened, at the fall.
When they did something, when they transgressed.
But
so I'm saying that what we know of as original sin is simply this: you are born with a human being with a carnal mind, and you want to feed. Look, she's in there right now. She wants to eat. She don't care about what else is going on. She wants her flesh to be fed, and that's what we do. And every time when we do that, it leads to sin. That's why I look at James when we're enticed by our lust. And when that lust is conceived, it brings forth sin. And then we're a sinner. But we can't say that we're born with sin, because that goes against what I didn't ever get a chance to turn to, where it talks about the fact that you had this evil father who was evil and wicked. He did everything contrary to the Most High. Then he had a son who was righteous.
But I think we all still have to, it's a requirement for all of us to be born again.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
So we won't need to be born again if we're not in sin, then we don't need to be reborn.
No, but what's going to stop you from sinning? Nothing. There's nothing that's going to stop you from already.
But you just used your example with the
already
son and the wicked son. What's going to stop them from sinning?
Already, Ariel is a sinner already.
But you just used the same example.
Look, that's out of the scriptures. People are described as righteous all the time, like Noah is described as righteous. But we can look and open up the Bible and see where he fell at. We can see unrighteousness in righteous Lot. Lot's called righteous. But we can look and see.
Well, that's my point. Even though they're calling him righteous, he still needs to be born again.
I'm not saying that you don't need to be born again.
Everybody needs to be.
But you need to be born again because you actually sin, not just because you're a human being.
But we're not the way Adam and Eve was put here.
Yeah.
They were put here.
Yeah, we're just like
everything was until they acted on their sin. I'm saying that's what changed to where they were ashamed. But before they acted on it, none of us are born like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying.
You're saying we are.
Yep. What baby do?
All right, I found something.
That baby ain't did nothing.
Okay, can I read this real quick and fast?
Go ahead.
To begin with, we know that Mary.
Hold on, what you reading?
I'm reading Jesus' DNA, and it said the same thing that you said, basically.
It's some commentary.
What is it?
It's Jesus' DNA.
Go ahead.
In previous blog, we discussed Adam's DNA. In the blog, we will discuss the DNA of Jesus. Will know that we do know Jesus' DNA has profound spiritual significance and clarified many scriptures. To begin with, we know that Mary was Jesus' mother, and we know that Jesus is the Son of God, was conceived by the Holy Spirit. Matthew 1:20. But as he considered these things, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream, saying, Joseph, son of David, do not fear, take Mary as your wife, for that which is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. We also know that Jesus was called the last Adam, 1 Corinthians 15:45. Thus it is written, the first man became a living being, the last Adam became a living, life-giving spirit. If we put these two scriptures together, I think we can reasonably be sure that Jesus had exactly the same DNA as Adam. It really had to be just as Adam embodied all the genetic variations of humanity. Jesus had to do the same. He had to represent all of genetic variations so that all of us would be represented in the body of Christ. and so that his death and resurrection would apply to all humanity. So when the Holy Spirit conceived Yeshua in Mary's body, he took her DNA and merged it with the perfect DNA that was created on the sixth day of creation. This had to be done to eliminate all of the genetic mutation and to restore all of the possible genetic variations that we're missing in Mary, including the Y chromosome. In summary, the Holy Spirit conception was necessary for two reasons. One, so that Yeshua would be perfect, unblemished sacrifice, and two, so that Yeshua would represent and die for all humanity. This is very exciting concept. When Adam sinned, we all went down with him. But when Yeshua was resurrected, we all were resurrected with him. And if we believe and accept this, we will all live with him forever. This principle clarifies many scriptures. Here are just a few. And it goes on to tell you about the image of God. In Genesis 1:27, God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female. He created them. The scripture takes on a new meaning. Yeshua, being the last Adam, had the same physical appearance as Adam. But in truth, it isn't that Yeshua looked like Adam, but that Adam looked like Yeshua. Adam was created in the image of God. Yeshua actually shared his DNA with Adam. All animals look like their kind, but man looked like God. Then it goes on to tell you about the body of Christ, and that's in Corinthians 1:12. And the word became flesh. This is when you study the DNA, you see that it is a language. We are part of the word of God, but part of God, part of the body of Yeshua. With him, part of him, Romans 6:8. Now, if we have died with Yeshua, we believe that we also live. We being part of body of Yeshua died with him when he was hanging on the cross. We were there. We were in the tomb with him, in Hades with him, and were raised up with him. What he did and what we did. So basically, he was saying, because it goes on. I ain't going that much farther.
Can I jump in and say something?
Mm-hmm.
I was just gonna say that man he's writing, or whoever's writing that article, they're writing from the supposition that original sin exists, and that's based on a doctrine that was developed primarily by Augustine, from what I understand. Augustine was an early church father. He was called a reformer. He's someone who basically kind of set the tenets for the church. But as I'm studying right now, what I'm learning is that Yeshua never believed in the concept of original sin. He didn't teach it. So what I'm doing now is I'm kind of trying to go back. I'm trying to go back and look at what exactly did Yeshua teach on that issue, because I'm personally just trying to stay as close to what he taught, what he ate, how he walked, how he prayed. I'm trying to stay close to that. And what I'm learning is that there are a lot of things that I've been taught coming out of the church that weren't really things that Yeshua taught. They were things that were added on by various church fathers. And so that's what I was saying when I was saying earlier, that sometimes when we're studying like this, a belief that I have will come up and I will begin to see that it's a doctrine. And so then I have to go in my personal, like prayer time and study time and start really trying to see, well, what did Yeshua actually teach or actually say about that? And then what he said, go back and look in Torah and see where that came from in Torah and the first 5 books. And then I'm able to kind of come to a resolution of how I'm going to believe about that. But I found that reading articles from Christian writers
that he didn't believe
to reinforce what I was taught in the doctrines.
So I think what this guy was doing was actually, I think like you said, he probably would have been affirming my stance in terms of the fact that Yeshua was indeed a human being.
Mhm.
And so original sin doctrine says that he needs to be separated from his humanity because of the fact that humanity equals sin.
Because we all fell.
But
Right.
then he goes on to say that we all fell in Adam.
Well, that's true though. But because we read that in Romans, it talks about that, where it talks about so the fall is real.
Right.
The fall is real, but what does it mean? Does it mean that sin is now passed on down to me because through my blood, actual?
But that's what I've been taught. That's the
No, that's
to explain what the fall means.
The fall is real. The fall is real, but what does that mean?
And that's where we got to go right there.
Right. That's where you got to understand what's going on. So what's going on is now that when we talk about what the fall is your carnal mind. It's your carnal mind being to the place where you're not able to rein in, per se, that carnal mind. You have the propensity to sin. So again, Adam and Hava had the carnal mind, right?
That's how they was able to sin.
That's how they was able to sin in the first place. So now what's different? What's different now? What is it? The fact that we've been separated from the Most High. We've been separated from the tree of life. The fact that we're continually throughout generations separated from the tree of life. When we talk about the fallen state is what? Your separation from Yahweh.
Africa.
Everybody needs it. Everybody needs it because you're going to sin as soon as you become aware of yourself.
It's your ego.
It's as simple as that. You're going
you get your ego, you say, I want.
Yeah.
I want.
That's what's going to happen.
So then I go and get it, no matter.
And because of the fact that what Adam and Hava had done in terms of being removed from the presence of Yahweh and their awareness becoming number one, right? What they wanted to do becoming on top of the list, because that's what happened. They were interested in appeasing their personal appetites above the fact that Yahweh said don't do that. That's the problem that every human being faces. That's what happened.
But Yeshua doesn't have he has no sin, so he wasn't thinking like that.
No, he never actually sinned.
Right. He had the propensity to sin.
Mm-hmm. But
he had that carnal mind. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. He had the propensity, he had the carnal mind, he had the carnal appetite.
But he didn't follow it out. He always did what thus said Yahweh, which was that why it was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand,
not because he had some
even before we're cognizant
blood.
Like Ari, we all sin. You know what I mean? Because as soon as we had the thought, I want, we went and got it and didn't care about what mommy, daddy, Yahweh, anybody had to say about it. We just did it because that was what our carnal mind wanted to do. It didn't matter what boundaries or anything. We just did.
So listen,
Yeshua didn't do that.
We have to give the Catholic Church credit because they came up with this thing in the first place, but they fixed it by making Mary. She was immaculately conceived too. So they get rid of the sinful blood.
Yeshua.
You know, that don't touch Yeshua because she was made immaculately like Yeshua.
In sin. When he was conceived in Mary, wasn't he? Mary was of sin.
She was of sin.
No, well, we know that she was a regular human being, but I'm saying what the Catholic Church does is they say that she was immaculately conceived as well, which now you don't got to worry about that sinful blood coming from her because she was immaculately conceived too. But what I'm saying is that they came up with the doctrine, and they also came up with a way to
explain the doctrine.
That makes sense according to how they explain it.
But
so,
you know, I'm sorry.
The other thing is that we have to be able to look at what they did and understand the logic behind it.
Right.
They had to say that, and if you're going to believe in this whole original sin doctrine, because they understand if you're a human being, if you're a human, then you got sin. Okay, but they said, we're going to fix this. We're going to take away the humanity now on both sides, on the mommy and the daddy side. So now all we have now is just this pureness that it's not tainted by the original sin blood.
Okay, can I ask a question? Mm-hmm. Okay, because Adam and Eve were created. They didn't have no parents.
Right.
But Yahweh. So they were originally without sin, period.
Yeah, because they didn't do anything.
Or anything. Just like Yeshua was without sin. I mean, he was created. I mean, when he came down.
I know, but it didn't have anything to do with parents, though. Again, sin is a transgression of something.
Okay.
There's no such thing as like the idea of being born in sin it don't correspond with what sin is. Sin is a transgression.
So we're born in sin because of Adam and Eve.
No, I'm not saying you're born in sin. Again, the idea. No, it doesn't say it. That's what I'm saying. You're not born in sin. You're not born in sin. The Bible don't teach you that. Good. Crickets. Good.
Fallen state. It's a fallen state.
Okay. We're in a fallen state.
Okay, so I'm just gonna say,
and that fallen state is that you're going.
But that Savior is also for Adam and Hava. That's something that people don't understand. Is that Yeshua was slain from the foundation of the earth. Yeah. So before there was a need, Yeshua was slain, and then that's why I brought up that 1 Peter 1 verse 20, because it says he appeared now for the sake of you. He appeared in his present age,
right,
for your sake. But the sacrifice was done
at the beginning,
before even Adam and Hava was created.
When Cain and Abel first slew each other, that
it was already done. But it was actually done. It was actually done for the creation that Yahweh made, because when he created us, I like that whole nakedness being the crafty, same word as crafty, because he created them like himself, right? And so we know that Yahweh,
he knows already.
He already knows. He knows what's going on. He knows.
Let me just say, when you get that, when that kicks in, that verse that I took you to in terms of Genesis.
You just got to ask the cook.
Yeah. When that kicks in, you're gonna be like, wow.
Say it again. The nakedness and craftiness.
Nakedness and craftiness is the same word. The same thing that was in the serpent that caused him to trick Adam and Hava was already in Adam and Hava, but they wasn't ashamed. In other words, they had this propensity inside of them, but they didn't use it negatively.
What's the word? What's the word?
The word is, if you look up Aron is a word for subtle in Genesis 3 verse 1, and it's the same word as naked in Genesis 2 verse 20 to 25.
Okay.
They were both naked. They were both crafty.
See, like coming out of the church, we were taught that the fall and original sin are synonymous. So what's happening is that we're pulling those two things apart from each other right now.
Yeah, they have to pull apart.
Right, but see, and it's not that you were sat down and ever taught the two are synonymous. It's that they are spoken of interchangeably.
Yeah.
So in your mind, that's how it is. So to have to actually separate that and look at it, you know, it might take a minute for us to like really process that.
Yeah, it did. But all I want to do is just give you the problems with the thought process. You can believe it right now, But at the end of the day, we just have to understand that when we say X, Y is a result. You know what I mean? So, okay, so.
I mean, because I think that sometimes people, they'll say it, but then they don't realize exactly what they're saying.
Yes, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing with the deity of Yeshua.
Right.
On either side. Because it's really the opposite sides of the arguments. Either we want to say that he's Elohim, or he wasn't a man, or he was a man and he wasn't Elohim. He was elevated to a certain state. But in order for him to be who he is for us, he had to have been Elohim, and he had to have been man.
Right. Right.
In order for him to truly be who he said, that was a perfect example that we looked at in Matthew chapter 8, where we see that he acknowledges his Elohim shit. And it's important that when we understand who Yeshua is, that he is both Elohim and man. Both. He got to be both, or else he's not fulfilling his place in the scripture. And you know, you can take it or leave it right now, but at the end of the day, you have to. I'm not gonna say you will know who he is. You know what I mean? It's hard for people to, again, like you said, when you think about all of these doctrines that are put onto us, when we move away, we bring them with us, and we don't realize that we're bringing them with us.
Right.
And one thing that we have to be able to understand is the fact that Yeshua was a man, and he was Elohim, and he was both. And so we had to be able to get rid of those things which negate those truths, because you know that's what he was. Okay, so we ended up talking about a whole bunch of stuff
that was needed though.
It spawned off from where we was, where it wasn't totally left field. It definitely spawned off from where we was.
But I think that was the Ruach, because, you know, like my prayer is to come out of her, meaning the Catholic Church that is governing the Protestant Church without the Protestant Church knowing it. So I'm trying to come out of those types of doctrines. So for me, this was really good. So thank you for going here.
Yeah. Okay, so that being said, does anybody have any parting thoughts before we come to a close here? Okay. I am happy that we had some back and forth and thoughts and counter thoughts on any issue. The whole point of all this in the beginning is for me not to just sit up here and talk to you about stuff, but for me to say something and then you have a thought about it, and then you have a response about it, not just a thought about it, but a response, and we go back and forth and we look at these scriptures and you investigate and you look into the matter. So all I really want to do is be able to spark a thought which will lead you to think about something more closely, and then you could go back and look at it and then come back and challenge me if you want. Okay. I'm just playing, but I'm kind of serious. Okay, so all right, that being said, we are going to be done for right now. I'm gonna stop this.